Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Saturday morning over here from Helsinki, Finland. Plenty to talk about today as we had a weekly closure for CME, and also the short-term time frame upside move that we were looking for has played out. And so what does that kind of mean for the next few days to come, being that it is a weekend? Probably not too much. At least I don't put too much weight over the weekend price action, but this is of course a big setup for the next week to come, and there are several very important things to follow up on that have been actually clarified in the past couple days here, or in the past actually 24 hours, that I do think merits a lot of discussion. So with that said, we are going to swing back into the Krown trading application a little bit later. It's going to play a humongous part into the analysis yet again, but I do want to let you know that the trading journal feature is now live over here. It's free for all users. However, unless you do have a premium account, then you are limited to the entries that you can host here because, well, you know, it does like cost data and money and all that good stuff. So we have to make it like that. And there are going to be some major additions coming in the not so distant future that will make it very much formidable. But for right now, pretty damn workable. Although I can't show you my thing down here, but because my screen is actually taken up by my face currently. But as you can see, you can document your trades. It can be held there, and then you can go and look at them over time. Anyways, let's get into the price action charts right off the bat here. We're going to start off with the short-term time frame analysis, of which I want to follow up on yesterday's short-term time frame analysis. And this is kind of what we're looking at off of this region right here. We're saying, hey, you know, very likely to bounce off this region back around about 45.5 or so, regardless of whether you're bullish or bearish. And then I'd be looking at 45.5 as a range resolution, even for an hourly time frame to close above there, initiate targets back up towards basically where Bitcoin broke down from just the day prior on the 31st of March, which is pretty much what we've gotten thus far. Other than that, because it is a weekend, I really don't want to make too many other major analyses on the short-term timeframes because I just don't trust it that much over the weekend. But ultimately, if you put a gun to my head and said, Krown, do it or die, I'd say, what the fuck, man? But basically, we actually do have a major base to be looking at now with the advent of yesterday's price action. This is to say that as long as Bitcoin is now above this bottom end of this blue box territory right here, even on a daily closure, I do look at this as still most likely to trade sideways and up to our next major targets in the $50,000 territories over the course of this next month to month and a half. But in this case right here, this would be the invalidation now. So we can move it up about $1,000, and we've been kind of doing this over time here on the higher term timeframes, over the past couple weeks, or I guess the past month to month and a half. And yet again, we can do it right here based off that. Anyways, as far as short-term timeframe continuation goes, however, I would not look at continuation towards $50,000 plus until, or really like $51,000 to $52,000 in the following week or two, until Bitcoin closes at minimum a full hour back above basically the high of this current rally thus far, which is about 48,250, or if you just want to call it 48.5, it's easy to remember, that's fine as well. Anyways, until then, just looking at range resolutions on the short-term time frame, so that is all well and good, and I think that is pretty much all that I have to say about that. I'm basically looking for a bit of a sideways weekend. Might come back down, test around 45.5, that's fine. Might pop back up again and test around 48, that's fine as well. But I don't look at that as anything more than just short-term time frame noise in this case, and very likely to range over this weekend if I had to guess as well, based off of the full hour BBWP, which is going back into a contraction phase right here. Anyways, let's now talk about two major things that I want to follow up on here. Let's get off of this chart for right now. Let's get on to, nope, not this chart right here. So we pointed out the other day, or I guess this was like 3 or 4 days ago, on the 29th to 30th of March, when this was actually confirmed, that a silver cross was in the making on CME chart, which I do put a lot of weight on because, if you just look at the historical results of this, it's been pretty damn good. Just blindly looking at this cross, it's not going to be the best timer of an entry, for example, but it does get the general trend very well, and typically stays that way for a while. So we'll go through the analysis of it soon enough, but I just want to, talk about what it actually is. It's just a 21 above a 55 in this case. That is a silver cross to the upside. And we got that, that being the yellow 21 above the green 55. Anyways, what I've gone in ahead and done is I've actually measured out all of the past crosses for CME throughout the history of CME, actually. And what was rather interesting to me is that all of these crosses, except for one of them, did take at minimum 30 days to play from the cross to the next major high or low. And on average, I mean, it's really more like around 100 days. So typically does hold its weight for a while. To put it in perspective, over the past couple years here, we did see the last one to the downside right on over here when Bitcoin was trading in the $51,000 region to $52,000 region. And that did lead for the next almost 80 days of downside price action, with Bitcoin finding its lows more recently in the low $30,000 territory. We also did see across the upside back on over here off of the summer bull trap, which did last from cross given to next major high about 93 days, so about 3 months, 58% done to the upside, not bad. Same thing, or somewhat same, to the downside over here in May. This one did cross a little bit after the actual breakdown really did happen, but still from that cross to like the actual printed closing low, about 63 days and 36% down. Obviously this one to the upside was for like infinity and 600+%, and then several over here. The only one which really only took a couple days, or really only a couple days from cross given to next major low, was it's actually 8 days in this case. Sorry, I do apologize. For some reason I had it in my mind that was 2 days, but no, it's a little over a week. This was off of the Rona dump, so a bit of a black swan situation. It is an outlier, or at least I do think so. So I just want to point that out, that yes, that is there. It can obviously happen, of course, but ultimately, whenever we have seen this cross in the past, it's typically, or at minimum, lasted for about 30 days and has some, pretty impressive price action, both the upside and the downside, minimum about 30%, let's say, and maximum, well, infinity, I suppose. But in this case right here, we did get across the upside, obviously. And as long as Bitcoin is above that cross, I do look at things as more or less upwards and onwards from here. This is also going to be mediated specifically by this chart, which, I'm already here, actually. This chart over here, the one that we've been looking at for, Jesus Christ, man, it's got to be like 2 months now. This is the volatility versus momentum chart. I always want to start off with the 5-day BBWP, because this signal has been really, 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 really important, and something very important has happened in the last 24 hours as well. But first, let me explain. Basically, over the past couple of years, and we could draw this out towards, the genesis almost, anytime that we have seen 5-day BBWP measuring volatility, the dispersion of returns, getting into the teens region, the expansion from that level has had some pretty, not normal, but what's the word I'm looking for? Consistent results, right? Especially in the past few years here. We have measured these out on this chart right here, and it has been an average gain or loss from the expansion phase off of that low of about 45% done over the course of 40 days. And again, we can pull this out even further and, measure it out over there. But in this case, I just think it's easier to see right here. So that has been the historical results for this. And what I'm kind of basing this off of. And the reason why I'm really calling it out today is because yesterday on live stream, when we were looking at this, the BBWP, which had just got a new tick, was actually having a downside angle, suggesting that we were still within the contraction phase context. After yesterday's little bear trap, let's say, it has actually spruced back up here. So I do look at this signal as active. I still want to see it actually have a close over close with that positive slope, but we can only work off of like what we have thus far, and thus far, it is consistently there. Still, this would take another technically 3 days left to confirm upon daily total closure, but in this case, the reason why I'm calling this out is because if we do take the historical average of this, which is 45% gain to the upside or the downside, or loss to the downside, I suppose, we could forecast targets here, which would be $56,000 to the upside versus $23,000 to the downside. I do look at this as more likely still to trade up and to the right. Again, very fucking specifically, as long as Bitcoin is basically above this week's low, which is like $44,000, I think, or somewhere around there, just above $44,000. Anyways, we have been using this advanced stochastic over here to kind of get a bias on direction, and well, it's been rather consistent again in the past. Anytime that we have seen it headed to the downside alongside that expansion phase, again, the expansion phase measured by the BBWP and then mediated by the momentum oscillator right here, has been, getting the direction perfectly actually in the past couple of years here. And again, we can go even further than that. These two ones the upside, and obviously these were upside price actions right there, but again, a little bit more difficult to see. Anyways, first one was to the downside. Yes, there is your downside move. Next one to the upside, next one to the upside again, and then down in December. And what do you know? Down, up, down. And on our current one that we are seeing expansion from, not only is the 5-day stochastic momentum above the bearish control zone, it's actually in the bullish control zone now, and will be remaining with upside posturing as long as Bitcoin is closing above 39,200. So we could go as far to say that, for the macro, as long as Bitcoin's above there, I don't really think that it's like worthwhile to consider any major humongous downside. Doesn't mean that it can't happen, but I'd even go as far as to say that, as long as Bitcoin's above this week's low, I'd actually look at that as, very likely to play out the upside over the next 40 days or so. So that would be like a month to a month and a half, seeing as we're kind of seeing expansion over the past closure here. So that is actually a pretty good long-term signal. Anyways, I wanted to bring up over here, I've been avoiding mentioning the sentiment within this market because I don't want to come off as like a fucking jackass, but it is very fucking interesting to see on, I guess this was Friday. Yeah, because I woke up after like the actual little dump party happened. But after a, this is so fucking funny to me. After a basically unabated 30% move to the upside, Bitcoin pulls back, I think about 8% from wick to wick. Yeah, just over 8%, 8.25%. Everyone gets not everyone, obviously, but the bears, who have been quite bearish throughout this whole round of the upside, get quite exuberant, at least from what I can tell going across the crypto Twitter and crypto YouTube universe. Let me know if you've seen kind of the same things. Just maybe it's the circles that I'm kind of watching, but I keep tabs on both sides of the circle, like the super bulls and the super bears, and it's always very interesting to kind of shadow them and see what's going on. Anyways, in this case, was this a reasonable pullback? Yes. And we did have range resolutions that kind of suggested, those moves were likely to happen the day prior. And, that was all met. So this was quite a technical move coming into the new quarter here. Anyways, what I wanted to reference now is back on over here on the Krown trading application. The funding rate on the daily is negative, meaning that if you're short, you're paying to hold your position. Now, if we do go down to the hourly feed, it is slightly positive, yes. So it should be known right there. But do keep in mind that, over the last 24 hours on average, it's actually been negative, which is really fucking interesting, man. These are very, 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 very small numbers, but even the fact that they're close to zero anyways is rather revealing, of the sentiment within this market. So that does suggest that, people were being quite aggressive in the last, 24, 36 hours here, market shorting into that move. And you would imagine that, especially as long as Bitcoin's above about 45.5, those are trapped positions. Those are by definition trapped positions. So as long as Bitcoin essentially remains above that region, even short-term timeframes, I'm just looking for sideways and probably ups to start this next week. But now we should get into the validation conditions and invalidation conditions for this next major move, because we've already looked at the silver cross chart and also the silver cross chart, and then also the volatility versus momentum chart over here, which do suggest higher. We could also come at it from a few other angles as well, although we're not able to confirm the hidden bullish evidence on the monthly, which would have made things a lot more easy. But ultimately, if I were to make this as simplistic as possible on the weekly right here, which keep in mind, CME already closed. Look, as long as price action is above the week low for CME, which CME is already closed, so this is set in stone, which is 44,345 or so, or that's quite literally what it is. I'd look at that as, correction over or short-term correction over and very likely upwards and onwards. Problem is, this does need to be said right here. The problem is that if Bitcoin does come back down below this past week's low for CME, I don't think it'd happen over the weekend, probably happen next week if it is going to happen at all. This would be a lower high, and being that it would be a lower high, it would also have natural hidden bearish divergence between the highs in December over here and the high that you're seeing right here. If that were to happen, until that happens, that's, it's a possibility, it's just not, but it's not actionable, at least in the way that I look at things. So I always want to, reiterate that, there are still causes for concerns, but now can kind of move up those areas where I would consider this a failure and, very likely a bull trap. And at that point, bears are not just going to be right, they're going to be phenomenally fucking right. And we're very likely to see price action back down into like the mid 30,000, maybe even low 30,000s over time. I mean, shit, remember this chart over here, like long term, that would still be on the menu, I suppose. Anyways, in this case, as long as Bitcoin's above that region, I don't think that it's even really worth considering. And And I mean, even the weekly jewel is getting a nice signal supported by DMI right here. So I do suspect that over the next, month or so, we probably do trade higher. Anyways, let me put on my drawing tools right here, and I do want to express that there is a good reason to be somewhat defensive against a greater pullback. I wouldn't say relatively soon, but at some point with these specific regions in mind. So one of them is kind of where we're at right now at 47,500. I think that that's a little bit less likely, to be honest with you. I think that we kind of got the pullback from that region. I think the two areas that we could see a pretty major pullback would be one from the $51,500 to $52,000 region at the 0.5 right here, also in line with the last major breakdown that we saw from December. And then the big one, and what I think is probably the most likely given the greater picture, would be about $56,000 right here. What am I basing that off of? Well, one, I'm basing that off of the fact that markets don't go straight to the upside or the fucking downside, obviously. But the big one for me is global open interest. So on that last rally high, when Bitcoin got just above $48,000, we saw the open interest representing leveraged positions get around 14.5 billion, which, to put that in perspective, there were more leveraged positions on the board at that point than in December when Bitcoin was trading at $52,000, let alone when Bitcoin was trading above like $55,000 in early December. Also, to put that in perspective, that was about as high as what we saw in April of last year when Bitcoin was putting in its last major all-time high at $65,000. And anytime in the past couple of years that we have seen open interest get above 14 billion, the pullback after that was a pretty massive unraveling of price action, at least 20%, and in some cases a lot more than that. Obviously, the summer one was like 50%. Anyways, going back to this chart over here, it depends how high Bitcoin gets first before I look for that to be actionable in this case. If it were to happen from this region right here, in case this market goodbye for a long time, very likely going to see back down to mid to low $30,000 territory, bounces along the way, obviously. And the downside plays out. I think that's a lot less likely, given, granted, the reasons before. The $52,000 region right here, let's say, if it happens from there, probably looking at a move back down somewhere around kind of where we're at right now at about 44 to 45. If it happens from the $56,000 region, probably looking at a move back down around $48,000 to $50,000 if I had to guess. So it just kind of depends, and we'll have to play that one by ear because there's no way to know in advance, depending, despite what anyone might have you believe. Anyways, yeah, I think I just briefly mentioned this, but I think it needs a little bit more of a well-documented statement here. But basically, I would call essentially continuation to the upside towards that $51,000 to $52,000 target next. Over the course of the next week or so, upon confirmation, aka validation above about 48.3, let's call it, this high right here. And I do look at that as more likely as long as Bitcoin is especially above 45.5, but at maximum as long as Bitcoin's above the low of this week, which is basically $44,500. Bitcoin even closes like a 4-hour delta below there, I would be looking for price action to come down significantly further, bounces along the way, obviously, one of them being probably around 42.5 or so. But ultimately, I'd be looking for Bitcoin to play out the downside move based off of this chart right here. Until then, though, I think Bitcoin still very likely trades up and to the right with those targets in mind, and potentially even extends it over time as well. Other than that, I don't think it needs to be any more complicated than this. Probably expect sideways within this range here, around the week, for this week, and that being between about 47.5 to the upside versus about 45.5 to the downside. We're literally right in the fucking middle of that range right now, so I don't think that that's, at least personally speaking, I don't think it's even worth like trading, especially over a weekend. But hey, man, to each their own. I'm gonna sign off on that note. I hope that this was in some way helpful. And yeah, take care and see you hopefully soon. And today's a very special day. Today's a very special day, and it's not April Fool's anymore because I didn't want to announce this on April Fool's because I think people would think that we were joking or something, but it's actually our anniversary day for myself and Elsa. So we're going to enjoy the rest of our day, going to go out for a nice little dinner, hang out, enjoy each other's company. And yeah, so I'll probably be away from the computer for most of it. And with that in mind, wishing you well as always, take care and see you soon.